know that they can be doing better in life. And what I've been able to do over the last decade is to put tools and training and certain programs and products together to just be able to help people realize that potential that they have inside of them and then hold them accountable to getting that done. I think, a lot of people say that they want to achieve certain things, but there's a difference between wanting something and then actually doing something. And normally it's those action items and the consistency and the accountabilities and, breaking through the self-sabotage patterns that we all have, the procrastination and all those things. They're the things that I deal with. Just so, yeah, really the most simple way is I just hold people accountable to their own greatness. And that's something I was speaking to Jess, so my wife, the other day about this, and we're going through just some of the stuff like our business core competency. And I said, ever since I've been young, I've always been able to see people for better than the way that they are in most cases. And it pisses me off when people don't realize their own greatness, but it's part of my job to help them to realize that we're all better. We're all way better than what we think we are, way, way better. And it doesn't take much, on the topic of kids and youth, it doesn't take much to realize that young kids, whether they have intellectual, there's all these intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities and all that sort of stuff and all these labels that get thrown around these days. When you look at a young kids are amazing. They're adaptable, they're resilient, they keep pushing through, they're high energy, they figure things out, they're very, very intelligent. But as we get older, we tend to let things hold us back and we start defining ourselves by those barriers and by those limitations. And as I watch people start to get a little bit older, in their mid-teens, every year after year and every decade after decade, you just watch people's dreams just slowly, vanish off into the distance. And then people start to convince themselves that maybe they're not that great, which I think is bullshit. My job is to bring that back out of them again and to make people realize their greatness.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good way to put it. Like, we just see, I guess, the layer and layer of of society's idealisms and things like that just placed on these people just right when they're sort of getting to that age where they can really start to make something of the world. But they're also, I guess, so impressionable at the same time. I mean, yeah. It's like, what can you do? I mean, what you're saying and what you do with people is like every parent's dream of just being able to help their kids realize their potential and stick to it. So it's like, I guess some of the biggest things that I learned doing your events and your courses is just getting to know your inner self and getting to know what you really value and things like that. And I find it so much easier to be true to yourself once you actually understand yourself.
Yeah. Look, mate, what I know about school is that school wants us to be good at a whole bunch of different things, which then I think makes people pretty average. When you realize that you're shit at 99% of things, it makes life so much easier because you just concentrate on the 0.01% of things that you're really gifted at. And that's hard for most people because most people want to be good at everything. But the truth is that by trying to be good at everything, you're going to be shit at everything because you're never going to get anywhere in life. You're going to be mediocre. You're going to be average, and that's as good as it's ever going to get. And for some people, that's fine. But I don't think that most humans, when I talk to them, when I ask people questions and I say, are you really living the life that you love to live? Are you really where you want to be in life? Is this what you dreamt of when you were growing up? And most people would admit that they're not where they want to be. Now, what I've found is that in our society, a lot of people now have an excuse, especially in this day and age. There's an excuse. Now, it's either because of my learning difficulties. It could be because of my parents fucked me up. It could be because, dad left when I was young. It could be because the school system shit. And there's always a reason why people aren't achieving. And that's fine. It's the government, it's the government that are screwing us up. It's 5G if it's fucking with our head. Whatever it is, there's always an excuse. But if that's okay with you and you're happy to go to bed at night and reflect on your day and you think, well, that's okay. That excuse is 100% acceptable and I'm cool with that. If you're cool with that, then that's cool. But I don't know many people that that's cool with. Most people say, you know what, it's all these things that are holding me back, but they're not cool with themselves. So in order to be cool with yourself, you've got to look in the mirror and say, I'm not where I want to be. The past may be behind me, but the past doesn't create my future. So I have a choice. I can create a greater future, or I can keep rehashing the past about all the shit that's holding me back. Now, remember, I'm the dumb fuck that got put in a special classes at school. You know, I was classified as having ADD or probably now ADHD. Like, I mean, you've been around me. I'm sort of partially mental. I talk faster. Like, there's lots of stuff going on in my head. And so, you know, I couldn't even read properly after I left school. Like, I could do okay, but nothing great. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with life. But what I knew was that I could be something greater. And I think the greatest opportunities in our life normally come from tragedy, where we have to reflect on our own lives. Tragedy is a massive wake up call to people. Like, it's the thing that people go, fuck, I could die one day, and am I going to be where I want to be? And am I happy on the path that I'm on? So tragedy can be a massive gift for people to wake them up. Not saying that that's a great thing, but sometimes that's the wake up call. For others, it can be where things fall apart around you, like as in, I've lost my job, my partner left, my kids don't want to talk to me. Wake up call. Um, it's normally a big incident that wakes people up, or it could just be one day where you just realize, like, that's it. I'm ticking off the days. You know, I know that every day I'm getting a day closer to dying. Could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be next month, it could be 50 years away. I don't know that. Okay, I don't have that crystal ball. But what I know is I'm ticking off the days, and that scares the shit out of me. So if that's the case, am I going to let the past define me, or am I going to do something about it? And something that I started realizing probably in my early 20s was that even though there are a whole bunch of people out there that tried to put me in boxes and labels, at the same time, there were other people out there who had those same labels who were doing extraordinary things. Okay, now, could I be one of those people? Don't know. But I thought I'd have a crack at it anyway. I got nothing to lose because I'm going to die one day anyway, and it's not going to matter. So I might as well have a crack.
That's it. That's awesome. It's like they say, ADHD. It's like the most common condition amongst successful people, because
Yeah.
they're not just disabilities and things like that. It's a superpower, and it's like one thing I also did get from you a lot early on was the perspective that we place on these things. Like, is it a disability or is it a superpower? It's up to you. And I was really like, and what you're talking about there with tragedy being a catalyst for people to wake up and sort of change their lane and really go after it. And I was thinking, if I go one step back and say, like, you know, a bit about my story, and I've shared my story with a lot of my followers, but with what happened to my brother, and I was then diagnosed with or labeled with PTSD, and came to one of your events, and you sort of worked with me a bit on that, and we flipped it. And it was when my perspective on that event changed that I really sort of found my trajectory, I guess. So it's that perspective that we place on it that just changes everything. And I think one thing I've learned from Lisa Dion was the greatest predictor for secure attachment isn't what happens to the parent, but how the parent perceives what happens to them in their life.
100%. It's all like, I mean, you've been to my events, I have the neuroscience behind this stuff. And that's why these days I don't really like listening to people's past stories is cool because you get a bit of an understanding around why they are where they are today. But that doesn't tell you shit about where they could be.
Yep.
So it depends. Like, how do you want to play the game? Do you want to spend the majority of your day thinking about where you could be and on that path, or do you want to keep rehashing the shit that came up in the past that you keep trying to deal with all the time? It's extremely hard to look back and run forward as well at the same time. You're going to keep falling over and you're going to hurt yourself. So what I've found over the years is that if you give someone a greater reason to move forward, they'll move forward. But if they don't have a great reason to move forward, they won't move forward. And, you know, like if you look at studies in addiction or, even studies in growth, most humans, or I would say all humans to some extent, the extent depends on each individual person, but all humans need connection. Now, how do we connect? Do we connect through our achievements? Do I sit here and talk to you about, you know, what I've achieved and the great things that I've learned and all that stuff? Or am I going to talk about something else? Now, if I don't have achievements and great things to talk about, what are we going to talk about? And that's where people get stuck into that. Oh, I've had a shit week, everything's been down, because it's a connector. Now, in our society, we reinforce connection like that. And I get challenged because some people come up and they start talking all that shit. And I go, look, that's good. Like, I appreciate you wanting to share with me. And that's fine. But I assume that you don't come to my events to keep telling me about who you were, not who you are. Let's go and find out who you really are. and let's look a different way, and let's make that the reason to connect, not the bullshit.
Absolutely. Like, you can change your whole perspective at these sorts of things. And
Mm.
it's, I guess you're sort of talking there about how everyone can connect through shit as well. Like, if they don't have their achievements and don't have other things, they'll connect through shit.
Yeah.
And one thing that shows is that everyone has shit in their life. Everyone has a tragedy, right? You know, you don't really get to be an adult without some form of tragedy in your life or close to you. So it's like, how many people are still living in that tragedy, in that initial perspective of it, that really brings them down and you know, gives them those labels of depression, anxiety, and PTSD and all that sort of thing. At what point do you say, all right, I'm going to flip this and I'm going to turn that into my power? It's like you say, it keeps rehashing itself. It keeps coming back and it keeps replaying because you haven't extracted that wisdom from it. You haven't extracted that lesson and what it is about it that is actually meant to propel you forward.
Yeah. Information seems to be the greatest predictor of growth. Now that's not in nature, that's in humans. Okay, that's I'll just make that clear. Because I've actually been studying the share market and putting together a wealth course at the moment. So I've been doing a lot of study on that. And you know, it looks like the market prices are consistently driven by information, and information can change just like that and drive share prices down, back up, around in circles, and those sort of things. We're seeing that with cryptocurrency now, and the elation in the markets driving, it's just skyrocketing things. But the same thing happens in our own life. Like if you have a look at teenage pregnancies and things like that, or even the amount of children per family, it all has to do with the education normally of the female in the family. The more educated they tend to be and the more career driven they tend to be, the less they want to have large masses of kids, or you know, maybe have a child at a young age. Now that's not always the case. Okay, it's not so, but it's just that's a predictor. So yeah, I think if we can help people to understand things a little bit better, and that includes themselves, I think that's one of the greatest gifts you can give people. Like my belief is the greatest gift that I can give another human being is their self-worth.
Yeah.
There's nothing greater. Because when you've got
there's so
self-worth,
much that, and there's so much based on your self-worth, like, you know, your sort of your money, your wealth creation, and your leadership, which is your parenting and things like that, is so much is based on your own self-worth.
health, you know, most people that I meet, they say, I want to have a relationship. And I go, why do you want a relationship? And they go, well, because then I'll be loved. And I go, well, that's a fucked way of getting in a relationship, because you're getting in a relationship to get something straight away. Now, if you develop relationships, just even in general, on what I can get from someone, you're already going in with an expectation, and eventually it's going to create resentment in the relationship, because someone's going to be pissed off that you want something from them all the time. It creates insecurities in relationships and all those sort of things. So if you can have self-worth, you don't get into a relationship to get love, you get into a relationship to give the love that you have. You don't have kids in order to teach you the lessons that you haven't learned for yourself. You have a child in order to give them love, and also to show them the path that you walk. Because they're watching, they don't listen to what you say. They watch and they replicate and they become who you are to an extent. Okay. And that can be extremely confronting for most parents, because they sit there and go, fuck, I'm watching like the parts that I judge in myself coming out in my child, and they're getting feedback. Like, you know, a parent who hasn't ever dealt with the bullying and shit that they've had in the past, or people criticizing them, or judging them. If they have triggers to judgment, they'll normally have kids that get bullied and get picked on quite a lot, and it will freak out the parent as well. And that's why parents tend to be so reactive in our society now, because you've got a bunch of wounded parents who, it depends on the generation. Like the younger generations now are, when we started giving out participation awards just for fucking rocking up for shit, that's where society starts going backwards, because you realize I get rewarded for doing nothing. Now, in nature, nothing gets rewarded for doing nothing. Everything has something to do, and those things normally create stress and pressure. Pressure creates expansion, stress creates growth. Now, when you take stress away from kids and you take pressure away from kids, it stops their growth. The other thing as well is that things that we're shit at push us into our values. So if kids are going to school and playing sport and they're shit at sport, And then other kids are picking on them for sport. They'll tend to avoid sport and go into something else. Now, they might be very academic. Now, they might be great at mathematics. They're probably going to grow up to be an extremely intelligent human being. But when they're getting participation awards, in their brain, they start wiring, oh, sport's good. But they're actually shit at sport. Then they go, oh, I'm good at all these things. And now they've become average, but they've actually lowered the standard of everything. When they get to an adult level, and now they're starting to play in real life, where if you're not good at what you do and you're not great at what you do, you're going to get left behind. Okay, adulthood is part of my French. It's a motherfucker of a game, because if you don't wake up every day and you don't perform, someone else is going to take your spot. If you're shit at your job, someone else is coming for that job. And if you have a business with a whole bunch of shit people in that job, that business is going to become redundant, and you're going to be looking elsewhere for a job. Okay, it's just how life plays the game, whether we like that or not. Because life is about productivity and effectiveness. And the more productive we are and the more effective we are, the better we tend to do within our own lives. Now, most people don't want to hear that. You know, when we're rewarding children for doing nothing, for just rocking up, it starts to create that mentality of that's the way that it's going to be in life. And then when they get out to the workforce, that's not the way that it's going to be. You got young kids who now coming out of university wanting $150,000 a year because they got a university degree, without realizing back in my day, that was like where you go into the workforce and you get your ass whooped for about 4 years. You're going to be the person who's changing the water containers, washing dishes, sweeping floors, getting wedgied. Like, you know, you probably can't do that as much as what it used to be. But shit, in my parents' era, you did like 4 or 5 years where you got fucking tortured.
Yeah.
Okay? If you made it through that torture, then you were qualified to start in that workforce. Okay, yeah. So yeah, we just got to be careful of that sort of, that thing that's going on.
It's like, I mean, I guess the society that was so worried about fucking kids up that they started giving them participation awards and that, and by denying them any, fuck up, it's like you just make the monster bigger. It's like, what you avoid just grows and grows and it gets bigger. So I think I was talking about this just the other night where, if one way to fuck your kids up is by not fucking them up at all, not giving them any voids and not giving them any pressure to go one way or the other or go all in.
Yeah. I think just on parenting now, I'm not a parent. I just have to say that, by the way. But I understand human behavior in depth, probably more than most people, including people who work in that space. But the things that people are afraid of are the things that they tend to need to learn something from, and it will keep coming up in their life and reoccurring until they deal with it. Any wounds that we haven't healed will keep being triggered or make triggers or pains for us in order to come back up. Now, kids are a great tool for parents to learn about themselves. It's not the kids that need to learn, it's the parents. When the parents learn, the kids will normally deal with whatever they have to deal with. But I mean, I didn't like getting bullied at school, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me fucking strong. And now as someone who gets bullied online almost on a daily basis of people telling me how shit I am and I don't have a university degree and that I'm a dumb fuck and everyone's arguing with everyone online, it made me super resilient because I couldn't give a shit what anyone else thinks. I just want to help people and serve my mission and serve my purpose. But that came from just getting picked on every day so much to the point where I snapped and I went, you know what? I just don't really care what anyone else thinks anymore. I care about what I think more than what someone else thinks. I'm happy for the feedback, but at the same time, I can't take on, there's almost 8 billion people on the planet now. I can't take on 8 billion people's beliefs, ideas, ideals, what they think I should do with my life. Every week, I get people who tell me that how to spend my fucking money, how I should teach. I shouldn't swear so much. I don't swear enough. You can't be everything to everyone. You've just got to be true to yourself. And only you know who that is. But when parents overprotect their kids, it makes them extremely weak to those things. And we're seeing massive increases in depression rates, suicide rates, anxiety, mental health issues. There's so many issues that happen with that. But I don't think that anyone has the answer either. So I just want to be clear with that because it's all a learning experience. And if we over support kids, it makes them weak. If we over challenge them and push them too far, it can crush them. So how do you navigate that as a parent? I don't really know. I know that as a leader in business with staff, and I've definitely crushed people and I've over supported people. And I'm still trying to find where that line is. And I assume every parent is doing exactly the same thing. They're doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. But the more that a parent upgrades their tools, the better that they can parent.
And I guess that's one of the advantages of the fact that our kids are such a perfect mirror of ourselves. It gives us that little insight, and that's why we know our children that well. We can tell when we're sort of pushing a little hard or a little not quite enough in that, because they'll react the same way that we react to that sort of thing. Because as you've touched on a few times, we are the blueprint, we are the template for them. And no matter how much we want to teach them something, if we're not living it ourselves, then they're not going to learn it. They're just going to learn what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay? Like my mum was a prime example, because she always tried to pump up my self-worth and make sure my self-worth was great and all that sort of thing. But hers was down here.
Yep.
So what I followed was all those little habits, all the self-talk and all the little, where do you sit in a room at a table and things like that. It all comes back to your self-worth. And I followed her habits, not what she told me about me. Mm-hmm. So that was a great contributor to where my self-worth is. So if you don't take care of yourself and make yourself into someone who you want your child to be, then you might just try and live through them, and it's just not going to work.
Yep. And it eventually creates resentment. I think parents are over support or over parent their kids. The kids normally create resentment and they piss off and leave. So I've watched this happen time and time and time again with parents who over support their kids and nurture them and give them everything. Once the child is old enough to leave the home, they'll normally leave the home, they fuck off overseas and they go to live, because they need to have that challenge. They need to have stimulation in their own life to want to grow. And in nature, things grow or things die. And if a child doesn't grow, it becomes dependent. Now, a child that's over supported wants to become dependent. It wants to rely on itself. But sometimes what can happen is between parents, because of wounds in the parent, the parent will create a symbiotic relationship with the child. And I've seen this happen quite a lot, especially in European families, where the mother doesn't want kids to leave the home because their whole self-worth is attached to the child. And once the child starts to get old enough, they start using guilt as a way of holding them back. And you can see generations of guilt go through. And for some reason, it tends to happen more in European females more than males. You know, males, it's sort of like get out of the house and go get married and go work and do those things. Whereas I've seen it happen more in, the European families where the mother is attached to the daughter, and maybe even the father as well. And they want the daughter to stay at home and, be a good housewife and have kids and all those sort of things, but doesn't leave the home until, she's met someone and is pretty much ready to get married. Now that's okay if that's what the child wants, but if it's an unhealthy symbiotic relationship, that's not cool. Okay. And I've got a family member who was, in his late 50s and still lived at home with my grandmother. And that's just because my grandmother's only purpose was to have a family and to buy a house. She'd already bought a house. She had 3 boys. My dad moved out at 19 because he had me. His younger brother moved out when he was young as well. And they were both pretty much dependent. And then my other uncle stayed at home. And once my grandmother died, he just sort of didn't know what to do in life. He got lost because he never even had to wash his own clothes. He never had to clean. He never had to do anything. It was like living in a fucking hotel every day. Okay, which sounds good in theory, but it stops your growth.
And we have this natural, like you say, a natural desire and a natural something inside us that wants us to grow and wants us to develop. And I guess on that unconscious level, we know that the optimum growth happens where challenge and support are both in balance. So when we're over supported, is it that's where kids tend to have a lot of nightmares and get bullied. And, if it continues right through adulthood, the bullies might be replaced by the police or other criminals or anything like that. But they'll always find that challenge when they're over supported.
I've been seeing a common pattern with kids who tend to use drugs or people who tend to get in trouble with the police or with the law a lot. They're either over challenged when they're really young. So they'll be someone who is in a really bad environment and they just learn how to be street smart and super tough in order to make it. So that's someone who is over challenged. The complete opposite also happens where they get over supported. Now, a child has to learn where boundaries are. If a child doesn't have boundaries and parents always support the child no matter what the child does, if the child smashes the window at home and throws a tantrum and, mum and dad are upset or mum's upset or whoever, and then 15 minutes later, it's all okay, I'll get it fixed, I understand you're upset, and there's no consequences for the child, it'll keep pushing boundaries. All of us, all humans, push boundaries until we realize where those boundaries are at some point.
We need them to feel safe.
In a way, yeah, I guess. And so what I've found is that kids who have parents who over support them and love them no matter what. And when I say love them no matter what, I mean that they don't take away love when the child does something that isn't, I won't say bad because that's the incorrect label, but when they do something that's pushing the boundary too far, where the parent doesn't disconnect from the child, take its connection away, and let it think about what it's doing and create some form of punishment for the child will keep pushing the boundaries. And I've worked with a couple of kids who are drug addicted, and also parents as well of the drug addicted kids. And I can tell you right now, it's actually the parents that are the problem, because the kids keep pushing boundaries and the parents are always there for them. So the child, I can give you a great example. I was working with a client that I had to sack. I got rid of her. I just said, look, I can't help you. Why you keep doing this? I can't help you. Because there's nothing that I could do or say that will make you change your behavior until your child kills themselves. That's about it. Okay, because you just won't wake up to the fact that you're not setting boundaries for your child. So this parent had been in an abusive relationship when she was younger, and the child got beaten up a few times. And so she always felt extremely guilty that she had fucked up her child. So then what happened was the child kept pushing boundaries and the mother would justify, well, he's like that because of what I've done. So she could never create boundaries because she'd never healed those wounds and she never really worked through it properly. So then the child, after a while, kept doing things where it starts smoking weed at like 13 or 14 years of age. Well, it's not the right thing, but you know what? It's not that bad. It's weed. And so she justified it to herself. Then, at 15, he takes the car out and goes and thrashes it down the main street and, scrubs the rims and all. Oh yeah, but it's okay because that's what teens do. And so she kept justifying it. As almost a 30-year-old, her son is still living at home, has been in a couple of really bad relationships, has a child with another child on the way with a different partner, has used different drugs consistently, has been fired from multiple jobs consistently. You're getting the idea about the type of personality. Now, then eventually, the son can't get a job anymore because he fucking rocks up to work whenever he wants to. He might rock up to work on Wednesday and not even realize it's Wednesday because he's been high all weekend. So this is the pattern. So anyway, she ends up hiring him in his business, in her business, gives him a management role of all things. Okay, because he's my son and what gives him management role. He comes to work whenever he wants, does whatever he wants, doesn't get back to customers. So she's now starting to lose customers. Business is going downhill. She's getting consistent feedback that something's wrong, but she won't take responsibility and accountability for it and putting boundaries because of her past wounds that she won't deal with. And she's done all the hippy dippy stuff. She does meditation. Every time I worked with her, oh yeah, I know all this stuff. And she's trying to educate me. Okay, these are the types of people sometimes they lack that fucking self-awareness of like, maybe there's a time to just shut up and listen because what I'm doing is not working based on the results that I'm getting. Some people just have to be right. And no matter, they think they know everything, but they learn, but don't implement shit into their own lives. And that's the hardest part, is the implementation and the consistency. So she keeps going through this pattern. Eventually, she leaves the car. She's got a work vehicle. She leaves it at work. Don't take the car. He breaks into work, takes the car, uses it for the weekend, ends up getting high, getting drunk, and ends up, I think, I can't remember the whole story. Son ends up putting the car through the roof of a house because he went off. Apparently the house was like set down and there was a road with a T-junction. He went straight into the roof of the house. Ends up in jail, all of that sort of shit. And I'd been working with her for a while, but she kept not rocking up for sessions. Even the day I said to her, after that happened, she rang me up and told me what happened. I said, you need to come in for the session. We need to work through it. And she said, Michael, I need to go to the hospital and deal with all the police. And I said, he needs to deal with the police. That's what he has lawyers for. You can help him by getting the right lawyer. But other than that, he needs to suffer. He needs to go through and learn about consequence. And until he does that, he's just going to keep taking the piss. She said, Michael, you don't understand. You're not a parent. Here's my son. And I said, then if that's the case, I cannot work with you anymore. Have fun. Here's your money back. Go on your way. That's what happens sometimes.
And if people I guess they put so much energy into avoiding their shit. And if they put even sometimes half that energy into dealing with it, that'd be way better off and it'd be dealt with moving
Well,
forward.
as you've heard me say in my events, you have excuses, you have stories, you have justifications, or you have results. The two don't match. So if you've got results, you live the way, like, I've worked with obese people before, and some of them, they'll tell you everything about health, and you go, then why the fuck are you obese? Okay, it's time to shut your mouth and just fucking listen for a little bit, and then go and do step one. Don't try and tell me that you know step 1 to 50, because you haven't even done step 1, and you haven't done it consistently enough to even think that you know. Okay, everyone can everyone has stories. Like shit, you can read the newspaper and tell everyone about what's happening in the world, but you may have never traveled, so you have no fucking idea. And that's the problem at the moment, is we're in the information age where it's so easy to get information, collect information, but there's a lot of people who do not get results, and it's because the hardest part is the implementation and admitting to yourself that you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It might be time to look at a couple of questions because we've had a fair few comments here. Just scrolling back. We've got Jeff here first up. Maybe people put goals or dreams on hold because life is busy with career and kids, etc. Providing for family is my number one priority.
If that's the case, then that should be your number one goal. Okay, like I tell everybody at my events, it's if you are clear with who you are, you know the priorities of your life. There's no point setting 50 goals when you can't even crank the first one out. And that's what most people are trying to do. I get them every weekend at my events, and they go, I'm going to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to get all this shit done today. And I go, okay, I can tell right now you're overwhelmed, your brain's erratic. At the end of today, you're going to go to bed, and the key priorities of your day aren't taken care of, because people like that normally run off of task lists and to-do lists, not looking at their outcomes and their priorities of what they're trying to achieve. Now, it's fine. Everyone in the world has different values. Family isn't my highest value, and I get criticized for that. Some people who have their highest values family, they come into my events and they say, you should spend more time with your family. And I say, you should fucking look after yourself. Okay, because it's not our job to tell other people how to live. It's someone like my job, or someone in this industry, to help you to understand how you need to prioritize your time to live the way you want to. So there's no right and wrong way to live. If your highest value is family, spend time with your family, but don't bullshit yourself and go, well, I want to be a millionaire at the same time that I want to have a six pack, at the same time that I want to work 100 hours a week in my business and get a business so that then I can do what I want, when I want, how I want. But at the same time, I want an amazing relationship, because every decision that we make has consequences. Okay, there's always a consequence. I've spent the majority of my day-to-day studying, because that's my highest priority, is teaching and learning. So I spend probably 90% of my day doing that. I spend, on my third highest value is exercise. So I spend an hour to an hour and a half a day exercising. And then other than that, I don't do much else. And then I go out and I connect with people in business and so on. But I don't do much else. But I get a lot of people who say to me, you're not that exciting. What do you want me to do? Go to the footy on the weekend? Because watching the football doesn't help me achieve my goals and my dreams. But to other people, friendship might be their highest value, and connecting with their friendship circle is really important to them. So everyone has a counterbalancing value structure that allows them to be who they are. But just don't be one of those people who try to do everything all at the same time, because you'll end up stressed out, burnt out. You'll be so fucked off at yourself at the end of every day, at the end of every week, and you'll feel like you're getting nowhere in life. It's a really bad strategy, and I see it every day from people. It's just, you've got to be honest with yourself. My number one priority in life is teaching and learning. So I prioritize my day, I prioritize my week and my month and my year like that. My second highest priority is connecting with people who have similar values to me, who love to teach, who love to learn, who love to generate wealth in business, who also like to look after themselves and their health. But a lot of my friendship circle don't have young kids and families and things like that, because that's not part of their value structure. Whereas my sister, on the other hand, she has a high value on family. So I've got a niece and a nephew. She's an amazing mum, married, and works. But her work isn't her highest priority. She only works to make money to support the family. That's it. She doesn't do overtime. She doesn't work weekends, because that's not her highest priority. The best thing that people can do is be 100% honest with themselves and go, my goals reflect who I am as a person. because outside of that, you will fuck up your life and your head. And I can tell you right now that the majority of people that I've ever worked with depression normally have it because they're creating comparatives that they can never live up to. Okay. We're shit at 99.9% of things. You just got to figure out what that 0.01% of things are that you're really good at and just do that. Because that's the greatest gift that you can give this world. And if being a parent is that, that's awesome, because the world needs great parents. Okay. If it's hardworking people, the world needs people who dedicate their life to a career. Okay. It all depends. It all depends on what your value structure is. So yeah, I hope that helps.
That's awesome. I mean, and I like what you say about depression there, like without going too far down that rabbit hole at this point. Depression is where, you perceive yourself to be right down here. And if everything's always in balance, then what is it that's up here that's sending you so far down? And it's normally some kind of fantasy that you have about your particular situation or what it is you're depressed about.
It's a self-comparison of, so just to clarify that, because you're exactly right. It's a self-comparison between who you are and where you are today versus what you fantasize about or what you think you should be or where you should be at or what you should be doing. And that's normally based on someone else's values. Okay, I know personally right now I love training and exercising, but the chances of me having a six-pack is minimal because I spend the majority of my weeks either eating out, having lunches, having business meetings, or in hotels and shit when I'm traveling or teaching. But I have other friends who their whole life is dedicated to a six-pack. Yet they might catch up with friends for maybe 1 hour a week. And if you ask them out for lunch, they'll bring their own pre-packed, calorie-counted lunch. But that's their highest value. So it all depends. You have to be honest with yourself.
And you're working with Australia's fittest man now, aren't you? Is that right?
Yeah, James Newberry.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome.
He was 5 times Australian fittest man, and then he was, I think, 5th in the CrossFit Games in 2019. And last year, he broke his back just before the CrossFit Games on a mountain biking accident, and so this year he's coming back. So yeah, awesome. I've done a little bit of work with him. I haven't seen him for the last 4 weeks or so, but yeah, hopefully I'll catch up with him again the next week. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, cool. One thing I want to touch on too there, like talking about values, it's such a foundational key thing.
Yep.
And so that's where I've found with my work, trying to reconnect families who have found themselves just a bit sort of fragmented, and that is if you can work out, or you use the tool to find out what your own values are, and you get to know what your puzzle piece looks like, right? If your family is just like a puzzle, or 4 or 5 piece puzzle, depending on how big your family is, you can't really work that puzzle together if you don't know what each piece looks like. So if you say, these are my values, so this is what my puzzle piece looks like, and this is my son's values, so he looks like that, and you'll find out how you can all piece that together and start to get that synergy within your family.
Yep.
So
something that...
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, mate. I was just going to say, something that is really important is that if a parent lives their values, they will tend to project less onto their child.
There's a bit of gold there for people to write in their notepad.
Yeah, well, when a parent lives outside of their values, they try to make their child into them. And the parts of themselves that they don't like, they're trying to heal that part of themselves. So for instance, like if a parent is not living their values, incongruent with who they are, is trying to be everything to everybody, that person I'm talking about, I want to have a better body, but at the same time, I want to be making money. I want to have a high career. My kids are important, but at the same time, I want to go out and drink beer on the weekends with my mates. Plus I'm working 50 hours a week in a job. That person is going to be someone who is quite confused about how they want to live and who they are. So they might have a past fantasy about being a footballer, for instance. And then so when their child grows up, the first thing that they do is teach a kid how to kick a footy. Because that's really themselves going, if I was a footballer, I would have all my shit sorted in life now. And then as a child grows up, they keep pushing the child into sport. And they're the parents that you see like super fucking aggressive at football on weekends. They keep pushing their child into playing sport and doing sport and things like that, instead of figuring out what the child actually wants to do. And kids, as part of our journey in life, we have to lose ourselves in order to find ourselves again. And so part of the child experience is partly losing ourselves based on the projections of others. But kids normally start displaying their values pretty quickly. Okay, I watched my nephew at like 1 or 2 years of age. picking up a hammer and nailing shit together. I noticed that he didn't want to be inside. My niece will sit inside and color and draw, and she loves connecting with family, but she's not so social with other kids. Whereas my nephew, he's social with, he doesn't give a fuck, he'll talk to anyone. So from a young age, highly social, wants to be outdoors, and loves building things. My niece, on the other hand, from a young age, she would go and change her clothes 4 or 5 times, and she would use her clothes to express how she's feeling. So fashion or something like that's probably going to be important to her throughout her life, unless her values change. Family is also an important value to her. Okay, when she's around other kids, she can take them for a little bit, but she'll just go off and do shit by herself. Okay, you can see those values coming out, and if parents are aware and they nurture those values, the kid will really thrive within their value structure. And you can see this when I watch some of the young extreme sports athletes, and some of them are phenomenal. Like we're talking 8 and 9 years of age, doing backflips on push bikes, tail whips, racing motocross. Like if you go and have a look at Brian Deegan's kids, the motocross supercross rider, his kids, he's got two young boys. They are amazing in supercross, and his daughter, I think, races NASCARs, and she was like the youngest female to ever race NASCARs, or the youngest person, I believe. But that's because they've been supported to do that. It just depends. The more wounded a parent is, the more they're going to project onto their child and say, you should live life like this. And my mum did it to me. You have to be good at school. She fell pregnant with me at 17 years of age in a Catholic family. My grandpa never went to school. He left school. He had to pull out of school at 13 years of age because his dad died and his mum never worked. So he became man of the house and dropped out of school. So I assume that he had this past wound of being uneducated. So he has 4 kids. All of them went to university except my mum, because she had me at 17 with my bogan atheist dad. Now, that probably became part of my mum's wounds. So growing up, my mum kept saying, education's the most important thing. You've got to do well at school. You've got to get a university. You've got to get a good education. So that was important to my mum, but I was put into special classes, told that I had dyslexia, all of those sort of things. So that confronted my mum the whole way. And we used to butt heads massively because she would consistently tell me that, if I was going to do bad at school, where I would end up. Okay. But, lucky for me, I just realized that I'm just going to do my own thing.
That's awesome. And it's, I like what you sort of touched on a few times there, in the way that we find all these different ways to connect with, whether it's our family or our social circle, whatever it is. And especially for younger, like the very younger kids, connection is very often up there in their top values, because that's essential for their survival. And so it's really important knowing your kids' unique values, but also just sort of understanding how it is that they're trying to connect, because that's generally how they're going to ensure their survival, is by connecting with their caretakers. So that's a really good thing. If I find I'm going to another question here, we've got Sarah saying, yes, how can you target this message to young adults? This is kind of where a lot of our traumas happen, or our bad experiences with things. Yeah, so I guess these messages that we're sort of insights that we're sharing here, I mean, how do we target that to young adults?
It can be challenging. Okay, look, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. Everything in life that's fulfilling and worthwhile is extremely hard. Okay, I study a lot and I still feel like I'm a dumb shit. Okay, because in our values, it comes from a void. It comes from a sense of missingness. So I was talking on a podcast about a week ago, and I had, just as an example, and I know I sort of dart around this, but I hope that it helps people to sort of think about their own situations. It was on this podcast. It was a health podcast. And the guy had done a lot of studying, and you could tell he had. And he said to me, we were talking about like health and mindset or something. And he said, I only train because I love myself. And I said, well, that's bullshit. And he said, no, I train because I love who I am as a person. And I said, you would not train unless you had a comparison between yourself and somebody else. Because there's part of us that's trying to fulfill a void to be better. Now, if we look at a void which creates a value, in order to have a value, you have to perceive that something's missing. If I felt like I was smart enough, why would I study? If I felt that I was fit enough or strong enough or muscly enough or whatever the fitness reason goal is, why would I study? If you thought that you were the world's best parent, why would you parent? Like, you're already doing a great job. Why would you want to learn anything else in order to do that better? There's a sense of missingness and an insecurity that is in our values. And so I held him accountable. And he didn't like it for a little bit, but then it clicked to him. And I said, the only reason why you train and exercise is because, number one, you know you can be better, but also you're comparing yourself to something else, which is better. Now, you might be comparing yourself to somebody else. You might be comparing yourself to the potential which you know that you have to be able to do, but your insecurity drives you to do what you do in exercise and, beg pardon, and training. If you're a parent, your insecurity around parenting will be part of the thing that makes you a great parent. But it's about controlling the insecurity. Every human being is insecure. I've worked with tens of thousands of people. I can tell you right now, I've worked with some of the greatest performers on the planet, from billionaires to people that will make millions of dollars, to mums, to dads, to, you know, professional athletes, and everyone is insecure. But we're insecure with what's important to us because we want to be better at it. But in order to try and make something better, you already have to see that it's not good enough in the first place. And that's our insecurity. And then we've got to control that. Okay. And that's part of the challenge that we all face, including myself. So going back to how do we deal with how do we get this message out to teenagers? Well, it's extremely challenging because, number one, teenagers are at a stage where they're starting to create their own independence. There's a great book by Don Beck called Spiral Dynamics, and he goes through the evolution of psychology a little bit. Now, I don't agree with everything in that book, but it's a great book. And he says that, you know, when a child's first born, it's attached to its parent and it relies upon that parent in order to survive, or the parental figure. It can't feed itself. It needs someone to feed it. Then the first stage of evolution that it really starts to go through is where it needs to connect and fit into a dynamic. So you'll find that kids tend to want to socialize a little bit at first. But then they go through a stage, and even when they're born, one of the first words that they say is no. They say no before they say yes. And no is a repulsion word. It's not an attraction word. So they're already they're already trying to understand things by separating things. Okay? As it goes through that stage, parents normally give the child rules. And so it starts to learn rules. And the first rule, like, let's look at a mother. If a mother's breastfeeding and the child bites a nipple, the mother will pull the child away and say, no food, essentially. And the child goes, oh, fuck, I did something wrong. And so the child starts to adapt and adjust its behavior to get what it wants in life. And we all do that. When people say they don't, that's bullshit. Right? There's this whole esoteric movement that's like, you know, we do everything for everyone else. Bullshit. As humans, part of our growth is to figure out what we want to do and get it. So humans tend to move towards things that it perceives will benefit in life. In fact, if you get bacteria, which doesn't even have a brain, and you put it into a single cell bacteria into a dish, and you put a toxic substance in there that it perceives will challenge life, it'll move away from it. And it will move towards things that enhances life. And all humans, all living animals do exactly the same thing. Every living organism does it. So the child starts to adapt its behavior between what it gets feedback on around what will benefit it versus what will challenge it. Now, the values hierarchy is already starting to establish in the child, because the child's going, oh, if I do this, I'm actually benefiting myself. But if I do something else, I don't perceive it's a benefit. Like when my nephew wants to go play outside, my sister says you can't go and play outside, goes into the bathroom, and he's outside because he perceives that that's more beneficial to his values and what's important to him in life than the trouble that he's going to get in. So kids do that, but at the same time, they also need to fit in. So they start to socialize a bit. They're trying to fit into groups and whatever. As they become teenagers, they start to really push against their parental figures. And so that's where they start to scream, throw tantrums. I don't give a fuck. You start getting the language coming out, and they push away because what they're saying is, mum, dad, or whoever's around me, you need to stay out of my fucking space because I'm trying to figure out who I am and what my life is. So they start pushing everything away. And children go through stages consistently, and so do adults as they grow, of stages of pushing things out of their space and then bringing things into their space. And they'll go through cycles. So through its teenage years, you'll hear no a lot. It will challenge you on a lot of things. The child will challenge you on a lot of things because it's trying to say, I need to establish my own identity away from you, my parent. Now, when you start teaching this sort of stuff to kids, it needs to be done in a way where the child sees it as being beneficial to them and what they're trying to achieve in their future and their values. If you just go into schools and say, here's how you should act and here's how you should behave, you get instant feedback from teenagers, which is like, this shit is boring, and they'll distract themselves, they'll start messing around. So teenagers can be very, very challenging to educate. Okay. And, you know, teachers at school, you know, massive props up, and even parents. Like shit, the reason why I don't have kids is because I think about how I was as a kid. And I think if I'm going to have a kid and it's anything like me, I'm going to freak the fuck out. Okay. Because I was a massive challenge. Okay. But yeah, I think that it's letting kids understand. First of all, I think that the best thing that we can do to help children is to understand their values, to challenge them within their values, and then also to give them little experiences outside of their values to sort of see where they fit. Because if you just support a child within their values, they might not get to experience the whole of their value system because they haven't experienced other things. I got asked tonight about one of my team asked me for a TikTok video. They said, do you have any like inclination to want to go and skydive? And I said, I really don't. It's not important to me. Like, I just don't. I did a bungee jump and I did a canyon swing, and other than that, they actually didn't even. I didn't even get any thrill out of it. It just scared the shit out of me, and that was about it. Okay, when I got off, everyone was like, "How was that? Was it awesome?" I was like, "I've done it. I've ticked it off of a box." But other than that, it's like, to me, it's like having a piece of paper that you've just put in a fucking drawer. It's like, it doesn't mean anything to me. Whereas I would rather go and meet someone who's extremely intelligent and sit down and have a coffee and a conversation with them. To me, that's more fulfilling to me. But someone who has a high value on experiences like my wife, that's like the most boring shit that I could do. Whereas bungee jumping and canyon swing is like boring as shit to me. Okay, so I think to a child, finding out their values, to a teenager, finding out their values, and even to adults, find out their values, understand what's important to them, help them to grow within those value sets, and do your best to understand other people's values, because it will challenge you to deal with your own insecurities and your own imbalances within your own life by seeing other people live their values. Okay. And it's challenging. Okay? But that's part of life.
There's another big gold nugget right there. Yeah, I hope we're writing each of this down. And I guess not knowing, or those who don't know their own values, will tend to project what their values really are onto others and criticize other people's values and all that sort of thing. Once again, just being lost and not knowing yourself. Yep. And I think for me, that's like your unconscious, because your unconscious knows what your values are. But if you don't know it consciously, then it's going to project them onto others and try and desperately find whatever way it can to get those values fulfilled.
Yeah.
And you get this clash and this friction inside you. Nobody benefits.
No matter what you do in life, you're always going to have people who judge you and tell you how to live and criticize you. So if you think about this, if you have someone like, I have a high value on wealth creation. That's why I run a business. It's why I employ people. Now, if you understand money is just the exchange of value. So I perceive that there's a gap in our market and I want to go out there and I want to make a difference in the world. So I make good money to be able to do that. I don't think I make enough because I want to be able to do this at a global scale. So for me, creating that fair and equitable value exchange through a product or a service is essential to what my mission is and what I'm trying to achieve. But I have people all the time who come to me and go, you don't give a shit about people because you got money. Now that's someone who has a very low value on money. To them, their highest value might be family, and they're happy to live in a cardboard box out the front of my house if they choose to, providing they have family, and that's fulfilling for them. But at the same time, they're going to criticize someone like me who doesn't have my number one or number two value. I get along really well with my family. Like, I have a really close connection, but my parents have been traveling around Australia now for the last 3 months. I sent mum a text message for Mother's Day. I speak to her about once a fortnight. And to me, that makes me fulfilled, knowing that they're okay and that they're doing their thing. Whereas to some other people, they have to see their family every week or even every couple of days. If not, it makes them feel shit. So I'm just going back to the wealth creation analogy. When I have someone who has a lower value on money, they're going to think that I'm cheap. They're going to think that I'm rich, and the only thing that the only thing I give a shit about is money. Okay. Then if there's someone who has a higher value than money than me, they're going to think that I'm a pushover and that I give up too much of my time and my energy towards people who don't deserve it. So who's right? I've got people who have a high value of money telling me that I'm cheap and I give away too much of my time and too much of my energy to people who don't deserve it, and partially they're right. And then I've got other people who say you only give a shit about money, who have a lower value. Now, partially they're right too, because it's important to me. So I track my money, I track my wealth, because I want to see the business grow and the impact of the business grow. And money's a way of being able to do that. So either way, I'm going to get judged.
And essentially what they're saying is, if I was living your life, this is what I would think of myself.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way of putting it. I have people all the time who tell me, why would you spend so much money on a fucking car? It's a waste of money. I go, look, next time I go to buy a car, just if you can send me a mobile number, I'll give you a call and just check in if it's okay with you and if it suits your life. Because I'd really appreciate your feedback around the way that you would do things.
And this is from someone who went from a Hyundai Excel into what, an Audi R8, wasn't it?
I've got a McLaren.
McLaren now.
So I've still got the Audi as well. But like, to me, I get asked this all the time as well about cars. I don't buy cars to impress people. I buy cars as a reminder of my own greatness. Because as a young kid, I used to look at cars that were beautiful, and I've always loved cars. I've always loved cars. And growing up, I always got told, you've got to have a good education, you've got to go to university, you've got to do well at school, you've got to have a good job, all of these things. And, being put into special classes, there was something inside of me that believed that I could be better. There was something inside of me that believed that I could do more than what I was currently living in the way that I was currently living. And I just kept believing in myself. So to me, when I see those cars, I get feedback all the time. People tell me it's like the most amazing thing they've ever seen. I take people out for spins in it. I take kids out and all that stuff. I let people sit in it, because to me, it's about the inspiration that the car provides. And every weekend when I'm out at car drive days and things, I get people come up and they froth over the car and, oh, this is my dream. Oh, this is my goal. And then I go, what car do you have? And they tell me that, oh, my car's not as good as yours. It's not about the fucking car. It's about the person that you had to become in order to own it.
Yeah.
To me, when I walk out there, those cars put a smile on my face. I open up my garage and I go, keep believing in yourself, dude. Just keep believing in you. I'm not even close to where I want to be. Not even close. Okay. And it's just a reminder, keep believing in you. In fact, it gives me chills and almost makes me tear up a little bit talking about it. It's a reminder to keep believing in me. That's all that it is. Okay. And if I can inspire other people to do cool shit as well, I hope that's the case, whether that be have a great family, whether it be to travel the world, whether it be to educate themselves, whatever that dream or whatever that goal is to that individual, that's the only thing that matters to them. And that's what they should focus on. They shouldn't be focusing on what car I fucking drive or how I live. They should be focusing on what is important to them, because that's the greatest gift that they'll ever give themselves. And that's also at nighttime when you go to sleep, when you're living your life, you go to bed at nighttime and you have a smile on your face and you sit there in bed and you go, that was cool. And then you wake up the next morning, you go, I get to do this shit again. That's the gift that I want to give to people when they come to my events. Okay. Not this person's got more than me and they're better, because that's bullshit. No one's better than you. Okay. You're the best that you are. You just got to find it and chip away all the shit that's not you, because that's what's holding you back.
That's awesome. And once you achieve that mindset and you keep that mindset up, you start to show those little traits, those little habits, and all those little giveaways, right? Success leaves clues, and you leave that for your children to copy and to take on. And that's really how you pass on, good money habits and good life habits and health habits and whatever it is, just by the action and passing on those tiny little habits that make the huge difference.
Yeah. And look, I don't have my shit sorted, that's for sure. Like, I just want to be clear with everybody, because I think way too many people are surprised when I say that at events, because I think people come to personal development events, go to personal growth events. They look up to people who have money or wealth and they think everyone has their shit together apart from them. I mean, I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but I just want people to think about it. Everyone's fucked up in some way, shape, or form, because everyone wants to be better at something. We want to do more. Now, that's not saying, I don't want to say that everyone is fucked up. It's just that everyone has that inside of themselves. We all have mental chaos. We all have stress. We all have pressure. We all have frustrations. It's just some have learned how to deal with it a lot better than others. it's just how we live the game of life. Like back in the day, part of the reason why I have a bent nose and why I have nice white porcelain veneer teeth and why I have a nice scar on my head is because I used to be that guy that used to get super angry and super aggressive at shit. So I got my nose broken, my teeth smashed out, I got stabbed in the head with a bottle because I used to be super angry and aggressive. Okay, I had typical redhead syndrome. Okay, I got picked on so much at school. When I was a kid, I just learned how to fight, and I would fight anyone. But I learned lessons that there are other people out there who can kick your ass pretty quickly, and even those who can't kick their ass can still hurt you extremely well with weapons. So, you know, where was I going with that? It was about sorry. So when I look back at my life, I go, I'm pretty calm now. Like I get stressed out, but I'm pretty calm. Like if I get angry, I'm probably angry for 2 minutes and I'll say what I have to say and then it's done. Is that better than the person that I was? Fuck yeah. But am I calm all the time? Am I relaxed all the time? Do I never get stressed out? Hell no. Now I'm the human behavior guy. You've been to my events.
Yep.
I get to hang out with some of the coolest people in the world in this field, because of my knowledge and things like that, and the tools that I've created. But everyone flies off the handle. Everyone gets stressed. Everyone gets frustrated. It's just, does your anger, the thing that you're pissed off at, does that last for 30 years? Does it last for 30 seconds? Does your stress last for 30 seconds or does it last for 30 days? Like, how do you learn how to use the gift that you have and the tool that you have, which is this thing up here? The faster you learn how to deal with this and the faster you learn the inner workings of it, the faster you can learn what you need to learn from those emotional states and keep moving forward. And I think personally, the goal in life is to evolve. Okay, because when I look at nature, evolution seems to be the thing and information seems to be the thing that evolves. So the more that we can learn about ourselves, the more we can learn about the way we live, the faster we can evolve as a person. Okay, and the more stable we tend to be. There's something in physics that's called entropy, and entropy is chaos. Those who tend to be unstable tend to be the most entropic, which means that they tend to have the most chaos in their life. And you'll see this with people who are mentally unstable. They create the most chaos in their life. So over time, you want to create more structure and less chaos. And the way you do that is through this thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It really comes back to like you're saying, how long is that stress going to last? How long is that chaos going to last? And I think it really lasts until you learn how you need to leverage that into your values and into your purpose. Because studying nature and things like that, I find nothing exists in the universe without a benefit and a purpose. If it had no use or no purpose or no benefit, it wouldn't exist.
Yep.
So once you understand that and you see things that you say happening to you and it's so awful and things like that, you're like, well, what's it there for? How's it trying to serve me? And once you leverage that and you flip it and you turn it into something that's for you, then it no longer needs to exist as a challenge.
Yeah.
And you can now use it to move forward, and then you're rewarded with some bigger challenge.
100%. If you have a look at longevity studies, the people who tend to have the highest life expectancies tend to have the most stability. Now, that might just be because they don't have massive goals and massive dreams, so they don't create a ton of stress. Or they might have massive goals and massive dreams, but they've just created a lot of structure and process in their life. If you look at Warren Buffett, he's just turned 94, I believe. I think it was his birthday, so yesterday or the day before. I think he's turned 94, the greatest investor in history. And Charlie Munger, his business partner, I think is 97. So can you imagine having a business that you started, 60 something years ago, okay, maybe 70 years ago, that's still in operation today with the same founding business partners, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, both of the directors in their 90s. Now, if you watch Warren Buffett's documentary, he lives an extremely bland life. Wakes up, goes to work Monday to Friday, starts at 9 o'clock, finishes at 5 p.m., goes home, reads books, spends about half the day reading, and then he looks at the share report, does a little bit of stuff, and then figures out what businesses he wants to buy. And he might only buy one business every year or 2 years. He's in no rush, just does his thing. Now, he eats McDonald's every day and drinks Coca-Cola. Okay. Now, if you spoke to someone and said, would eating McDonald's enhance your life? Most people would say no. Okay. It's, as far as health risks go, it's not a great strategy. But when you're extremely calm and you're controlling your stress, are the effects of having those sort of foods, are they going to be better or worse? I think I personally, actually, in fact, I know this is true. Stress is the number one common link to mental disorders and also to physical disease within the body. Okay, because it's entropic. The more chaos we have in our brain, the more it creates things like cortisol, insulin spikes. There's a whole bunch of things, hormonal changes. Then you get epigenetic changes. Then it can change genetics. So then we start getting disease, all of those things. Now, if you go and look at longevity studies, people who live in chaotic environments tend to have lower life expectancies, which is why countries that tend to have a stable economy and stable wealth normally means stability in the home. It also means that you normally have a stable healthcare system. And so when we've got stable minds, stable finances, and stable healthcare, you have higher life expectancies. Okay, versus people with chaotic minds who are living up in who grew up in flight or fight situations, then you've got high stress, normally low ability to generate an income, low education, and then normally lower life expectancies. So things in nature that tend to adapt and tend to create stability within their chaotic environment, and everyone has chaos around them, but it's just how well can you control the chaos and structure it in a way that it brings some sort of an order as you grow. Because if you create stability at the level that you're at the moment, that will only be stable until you start to grow. Now, things in nature have to grow or they die. So if you create too much stability, you'll stagnate your growth, and you'll eventually it will work in reverse. Okay, so you need to keep growing, but creating stability behind you as you grow.
That's awesome. That's more goal there. I like how deep you go. You go deep into pretty much everything we talk about. Nothing's on the surface. So that's really good. And I guess we are starting to get pretty close on time now. So one thing I had from people sort of asking a bit earlier on was, how do we actually inspire people? How do you think inspiration works if we want to inspire our kids? And I know we have covered that pretty well so far, but how would you sort of put that into a summary now?
Like I said, I'm not a parent, so I don't want to pretend that I have all the answers, because I don't. I understand human behavior, and I understand how children's brains develop into different, growth phases. But at the same time, I don't have to deal with the shit that kids create and the chaos that they create on a daily basis, which, I know creates a lot of stress for parents. I know there's a lot of pressure, especially in this day and age, to be everything to everybody. Like, I look on Instagram and you've got, the dudes with six packs, the girls with the amazing bodies. Then you've got people with money and wealth creation and the perfect family, and everyone's sitting around all happy and smiling and shit. Most of that's not true. Okay.
Yep.
And so what I honestly think is that, first of all, if you want to inspire your kids, I think the greatest gift that you can give the kid is you. Okay. I know the greatest thing that my parents ever did is give me them. They can't buy me anything greater than what they are. Okay. I love my parents because they are who they are. But also, as well, maybe give them the understanding that, and not the false understanding that's taught in this day and age, especially in the fields of mental health and so on, that we need to be positive, we need to be happy, bullying's a bad thing. All of that stuff is fucked, because it's like, let's just analyze that for 2 seconds. So let's get into bullying for 2 seconds, because it's a topic that gets brought up. When we classify bullying, it's someone who doesn't agree with us. So if I don't agree with you and you don't like it, I'm a bully. I used to get it all the time online. Someone would say some shit. They would create an argument from their point of view. I would create an argument from my point of view, and they'd go, "Oh, that's because you're a bully." Okay, well, fair enough. Great, you just labeled me. What are you going to do?
Makes it easy for them.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Does that help you sleep better at nighttime? Does that help you become a more intelligent person? Does that help you to defend yourself? Does it make you more physically aware? Like, what does that do, labeling anyone as that? It doesn't do anything. So what we need to do is understand why it happens and how to deal with it. And I think, we need to teach our kids how to learn, how to grow, how to adapt. I was watching a show the other night just on kids with like racism and all those sort of things, and kids with disabilities. And kids would ask questions to a disabled child, like, why does your face look like that? Now, that's not bullying. It's just that the child doesn't know. And it's inquisitive, and it's something different. So they're trying to understand. Now, the best thing that a parent can do is to help the child to understand things better. Now, if you understand why those things happen and you understand the depth of it, that helps the child, I think, quite a lot, but they still have to go through those experiences. Okay, they have to go through the experience of feeling pain. They have to go through the experience of feeling upset. They have to go through the experience of feeling hurt. Because unless, like, you'll never understand happiness until you understand unhappiness. And I know that there are times in my life where I'm consistently auto-correcting because sometimes I over-exaggerate how smart I am. And because you just get into a state where you're in flow, and then all of a sudden someone comes and they just blast you with their knowledge and you just sit back and you go, fuck, they like snap my spine. And you go, oh, and so it humbles you again. But you've got to have those experiences in order to figure out where you're at in the world. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps you grounded. And also after that, I go, shit, that hurt. But also as well, I want to be smarter because I don't want that to ever happen again. So it pushes me back to keep learning and growing. So we need to have those experiences. We need to have comparisons in our life. In fact, all of our sensory systems, from our eyes to our smell to our taste, has to create separation. And it creates, I'll call it like a shade. Okay, it creates, and that's not essentially the word that I want to use. I'm just trying to think about what it is, but it's a shade based on comparisons. Okay, we need to have those comparisons throughout our lives. We need to be able to understand things at different levels and different feelings and different intensities. I could say I'm stressed, and someone looks at me and goes, "Dude, you look calm." But to them, being stressed is like, I'm going to bed at nighttime, my hair's falling out because I'm so stressed. So it's just a comparative. Like, you need to have those different shades and those different tones throughout your life in order to have an experience of life. The false mystics that run around talking about peace and that everyone should be at peace and everyone should be peaceful and the world should be peaceful and everyone should just get along. How the fuck would that work? Like, first of all, you can't even put the two people who you love most in a room with you for an extended period of time without creating an argument and a fight. So you've got 7 billion people, different religions, different upbringings, different perspectives. But the way that we help our kids, or the way that you can help your kids, and the way that we can help others, which is what I try to do, is how do I educate people to understand where another person is coming from? So when they're judging you and when they're criticizing you, how do you understand it from their point of view? Instead of them digging up that old wound that you haven't healed yet, which then makes you reactive and you want to be right and they want to be right. Now you've got two people that are self-righteous attacking each other. And afterwards, you'll go through a stage where you feel wrong. Every time a person becomes self-righteous, they will go through phases where they're either they feel wrong or they'll be made wrong. Okay, like anything in life that you over-exaggerate, you'll go back to a stage where you get humbled. Okay, it's really important to learn that. And we all do it. Okay, I go through times where, I remember going through stages financially where I just thought, fucking sunshine out my ass. And then all of a sudden you run out of money quickly and you go, oh shit, now I've got to work 10 times harder than what I thought. And it humbles you really, really quickly. Okay, we all go through those stages. Okay, parents go through it on a daily basis. Okay, where you've got your child and you're nice to them and then they take the piss a little bit and then you get angry and frustrated and then you snap a little bit and you get a little bit too angry and then you go back and you reassess and you go, fuck, I was a bit above equilibrium there. I got a bit too angry and I went to here and I think I grew them a little bit too hard. If you're a self-aware parent, though, you can micro-adjust instead of being really volatile. Some parents will absolutely rip shreds off their kids, then they feel like shit. They humble themselves, but then they feel guilty, so then they overgive to the child. Then the child starts taking the piss. Then they fly off the handle again. Okay, then they go back down and feel guilty again, and so then they over-support the child again. And this is a very volatile pattern in parenting. If you're a bit of self-aware, you go, okay, well, look, I need to set some boundaries, but how do I do this in a way that the child understands, where they know they're in trouble, but at the same time, I'm not going to absolutely just rip shreds off of them. And that's a hard thing to do. Okay, because I go through it as well. I go through it with my team. There are times where I rip shreds off the team because they're doing shit that is unacceptable. And then I go, oh, bit too much. Okay. And I watch them like, fuck, we've done something really bad. And then other times, I give too much to them and then they just start taking the piss. And you're like, this has got to stop. So every human being has that. We're getting immediate feedback, and our emotions are essentially a feedback system. This whole shit of like, I can disprove it scientifically, but I won't get into it. Our perceptions create our reality, and our emotional system is a feedback system. When it's out of balance, then we get very strong emotional states that make us feel certain ways because it wakes us up to what we're thinking about and how we're reacting and responding to things. If we're aware of that, when we start to get it, like as you start to get a little bit of stress, you go, okay, cool. Let's just settle. What's going on for me right now? And then you write down, or if you can talk to someone, you can. I don't recommend it. I recommend writing it down and then go back and assess what you've written as though you're talking to yourself. So I don't go to therapy and sit there and talk to someone. I grab a journal. Today was fucked because of these reasons. This person pissed me off and I'm really upset about this. And I just write the way that I talk through my head. Then I go back through and I can analyze exactly what's going on in my head and the perceptions that are out of balance. When I bring them back into balance, it creates more stability again. Off I go. I've learned the lesson and I can stabilize myself. Okay. But if you don't stabilize yourself mentally, then you'll become unstable emotionally.
That's really, really powerful tool, that too. Journaling and just writing things out like that, brain dumping, like it helps, with overwhelm and with when you don't quite get what's going on in your head. I had a client I was talking to recently, and she found every morning when she was getting up and getting ready for work, she's described it as feeling this dark presence that was always behind her, following her around, and there was just something going on that she just felt so uneasy and she didn't know what it was. And I said, well, I guess the only place to start is by, when you're in that moment each morning, get your notepad and pen ready, and whatever words come to your head to describe that sensation, just bang, write them out, the first word that comes to your head. And it only took a couple of days, and she was like, that's all I needed to do. Because as soon as she wrote it out and got it out on paper and she looked at it, she was like, oh, it's because of this, and this, bang, collapsed, and she didn't feel it anymore.
Yeah, there's always patterns. It's good job as well. Like, well done on getting to that, because most people don't get to that point. Okay, I mean, we've had people that that have come to my events, or things like that, where they've been on a therapy for 30 years talking about the same fucking problem. Now, if you know anything about neuroscience, circuits in the brain that fire together, wire together, and they myelinate, so they become stronger, and it's a habit. So, if you're eating chocolate every night and you try to give up, it's fucking hard. Same as if you're smoking all the time, it's hard because you fight and wired it so often. So the more you talk about your problem, the more the problem becomes you and your identity of who you are as a person. And so when you have someone like me who comes along, who challenges it and goes, you're better than this, like, stop talking that shit. They go, but you don't understand, you don't get, and they fly off the fucking handle. Okay. It's almost like you told them that you're going to murder one of their kids. Okay. They will hold on to that story like you would not believe. Okay. And it's exactly the same as it's almost the same as an addiction profile. There's a little bit of difference, because addiction can also have to do with the neurochemistry and the chemical changes hormonally and those sort of things. But the majority of time, it has to do with an addiction profile, which is that a person has just done the behavior so much it becomes a habit, and that habit is there as a response to something else that's never been dealt with in a more effective manner. And that's all that it is.
And most of the mainstream approach and society's approach to addictions and things like that, it just creates more benefits to it. You become part of a community in AA or in whatever else support group. And like you say, your identity, it becomes part of your identity. It's how you connect with people. And they've got all these benefits on top of, like you say, in the chemical releases and things like that. And that's, I think, what can make it hard for an individual to crack. If just not understanding. But once you get to know yourself and you understand, these are the benefits I'm getting from this addiction, or these are the benefits I'm getting from, even if the addiction is yelling at your kids or just fighting with people or whatever it is, if that's the addiction, you're doing it because you're getting benefits from it.
That's spot on, mate. And I also think that, like, every one of us has ways of dealing with uncertainty. And some people it's to get angry, some people it's to get stressed, some people it's to curl up in a ball and cry. Some people, they call it depression. Everyone has a way of dealing with uncertainty, and those emotions get triggered from it. I think the best way that you can deal with uncertainty is, first of all, just to write down why you feel uncertain, and then figure out what the certainty is in the uncertainty. Yeah. That's not really that hard to figure out when you put it like that, but just everyone has different ways of reacting. Like, I grew up as a child who got picked on quite a lot at school. I had bright red hair. Okay, so it goes a bit red. But I had bright red hair, freckles, white pasty skin. I was a bit chubby. So I was like the kid that kids picked on when they could pick on someone. And so I used to cry. I would cry because I just wanted to fit in. Now, if you're a male at school with other boys, back in my era, like I was born 1983, back in my era, you cry, you get the shit kicked out of you. Okay, so after a while, I realized I can't cry when I'm upset. I can't cry when I'm afraid. I can't cry when I'm angry. I can't cry when I'm upset. I can't cry when I'm afraid. I can't cry when I'm sad. What I can do though is I can get extremely angry to the point where I can bust another kid's face open. And then they left me alone. And so in my head, I went, when I'm afraid, when I get picked on, when I get upset, I just get angry. And so my natural go-to emotion became anger. And I used it my whole life. Okay, I'm still dealing with it. Okay, now these days it's under control quite a lot, but that still comes up. That old pattern still comes up because it gives me it in the past. It's been wired so much that it gives me safety and it gives me protection. So there were times in business where we would be, like would have strains financially, and all of a sudden I'm like fucking flipping out, and I can't understand why I'm flipping out, but it's just because it's that pattern. And you just keep chipping away at it and chipping away at it. But everyone has one of those go-to emotions. Everyone. Okay. And so it's just a matter of identifying it and keep working on it until the pattern just chips away. But it's a habit. And all habits just take time. That's all it is. It's awareness and time. There are other ways as well. Like, you've seen the tools that I have at Thrive Time. Those tools can do it. But because the brain is such a web, a neurological web, very rarely can you just break one pattern and it breaks it for good. There's lots of you might be chipping away at a pattern for a long, long time, especially if it's been a big habit, until you crack it. Now, I find addictions are actually easier, like physical addictions, like drugs, alcohol, all of those things are easy to crack than people's emotional addictions. Because emotional addictions, if they've been with the person for 30, 40 years, they don't just have one neurological circuit that's wired. They might have thousands all interlaced on top of each other in different ways. And you just got to start cracking them apart until the person becomes more balanced and stable.
That's awesome. And I guess we'll have to wrap it up pretty soon, but a couple of key points that you've made here is it's not about the very common approach of, say, with parenting books. I'll use that as an example here of you've got a whole book on how to handle situation A, B, C, and D. When your child's doing this, you should do this. When they're doing that, you should do this. So you don't have a chance to flip to chapter 5 every time that your child plays up or mucks up. And that's what I love about this industry. And what we do is that it's about creating the foundational tools and getting to know yourself so that you have the ability to handle each situation and you don't have to refer to a book. So that's one of the key points I love about this. And another thing I wanted to point out for people as well is it's so common these days that I guess it used to be, what do you want to be when you grow up? You'd say to your kids and they'd say a policeman or an astronaut or a dancer or whatever it is. And nowadays it's like we need to teach them just to be happy. But how do you be an emotion? How do you be an emotion? You're going to be happy, you're going to be sad. And I think, as we said, kids at a very young age, they understand this stuff so well. They're so insightful that it's kind of puts that confusing stress on them, that confusing pressure. Like when I'm not feeling happy, I'm failing. So, and I think that's really not ideal. I think it's just so important to don't put the pressure on them to be happy. Just let them find themselves, let them find their values, and just take notice. And like you said, give them the challenge as well as the support. Give them the space to explore the values and explore what they don't yet value, and just let them grow and be the blueprint that you want them to be.
Yeah. Just on that topic, if you have a look at the increase or the correlation between positive thinking, personal development growth, and the rate of suicide and depression in our society, it might shock most people. Because the more that you tell people, and I don't know what this is. So I've asked this question in my events and no one can give me a straight answer. And this includes medical doctors and psychologists and so on. Is the rate of depression, is the personal development industry and the idea of positive thinking, is that the byproduct of suicide and depression? Or is it the other way around? Is suicide and depression a byproduct of the personal development industry, positive thinking in the mental health space? You make your own judgment.
Chicken or the egg. And
If
I
you keep
think,
telling people, if you keep telling people to be positive all the time, you're setting them up for a pretty fucking unlikely, situation in life, which is that you're never going to be positive all the time.
yeah.
So when you don't feel positive all the time, does that mean that you're a piece of shit and don't have your life together? I know.
And once
Setting
once
people
you,
up for failure.
yeah, if you have your life together, you've got all your shit sorted and all your eggs in a basket. Like, why are you still here?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point in being on Earth and in this life? I think, to be honest, it's, we talk about the balance and how everything sort of brings balance back. Chaos creates order, which creates chaos, which creates order. And with that, it's like we want to get close to that equilibrium line as much as possible. And like you're saying, with parents making those micro adjustments to not be so volatile and flying off the handle and then be over supportive and so forth. And if we're being so extremely positive, we're creating then that chaos of the high suicide rates and so forth, which then we're reacting to that and being extremely positive to try to counterbalance that. And we're just in that wave forever. So if we can become self-aware on a bigger scale, so that we can actually make the micro adjustments instead of those macro adjustments, that we continue to be so volatile, I think that might be the way to go.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. Society's always like a pendulum in the masses, where when something's fucked up on one side, instead of just bringing it back to a center point where things sort of function at a reasonable level, even when it's fairly balanced, all that happens is it just gets pulled across the other side of fucked up. And that's just a swing. Like, you have a look, a great one at the moment that I'm seeing happen right now in front of our eyes, which is absolutely brilliant, but at the same time, also silly and scary, is that we've gone from a male-dominated society where women were, they had no value in our society. And now we're coming across the other side where men have no value in society. And the people that are pushing that agenda tend to be females in the past who were wounded, who have never dealt with their shit. So because they're reacted and wounded, they want to make men suffer for their suffering, whether it has anything to do with the men who made them suffer or not. It's just men in general. We want you to suffer because you're the fault of all the pain that I have. And so it just swings across the other side. Our governments do it. Our governments do it between, we vote for Liberal or Labor, but they're the same. They're the same fucking thing. They do the same. It's just one side versus the other. They'll have opposing policies in most cases, and it just creates a swing back and forward. It creates volatile people who get caught up in politics, and they're this and they're that, and then so people start creating confirmation bias around why society's like this. It's craziness. Okay, I mean, even in sport, like, sports are humorous to me. I enjoy watching sport. Not that I get to a lot, but sports humorous, right? You get a whole bunch of people who have nothing to do with the game, who sit in the crowd, and then they give shit to other people about how shit their team is. And then you get people who fight and argue, and people's emotional states, like, if my team wins on the weekend, I'm stoked on Monday, and you tell everyone how shit they are, and yay, we won. We didn't do shit. You sat in the grandstand, ate a fucking pie, and drank beer. And now your whole week is based on how you feel, based on the way that other people played on the field. And so our society is so driven by things outside of themselves changing and pulling them in different directions. The media does it absolutely brilliantly. Like, the media is absolutely brilliant at driving society into chaos. And they do it so well, but people are so predictable that they're reactive. And the more you can keep people reactive, the more you keep them stupid. Okay? If you have a look at how the brain's structured, when intelligence is high, emotions are low or governed. Our limbic system is controlled by the prefrontal cortex, which is the most evolved part of the brain. When we're living the life that we love to live, okay, which is why I teach that at our Thrive Time event, is when you get clear with your map in your own life and you know who you are and what you're here to do, and you have the tools to stay emotionally stable, you'll govern your emotional state and you'll stay on your track. When you become emotional, you start getting pulled off track, and the more emotional you become, the more you swing back and forward, and the more you want happiness and the more you avoid unhappiness, the more you avoid pain and the more you move towards pleasure. And even the experts in these fields, like in psychology, they'll talk about the pleasure and pain model. But the pleasure and pain model is based on animal research. So if you want to be a fucking animal, that's cool. Okay, apart from in the bedroom. If you're an animal in the bedroom, I've heard that's okay. That's my shitty humor, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know me. But
It's all right, it's past bedtime.
yeah, oh good. But yeah, if like most of the research comes out from like in neuroscience and psychology around these topics. They do studies in animals. Like if you look at habit creation, the majority of habit creation research is by giving mice sugar or cocaine. Now, cocaine and sugar are fucking massively addictive. They're two of the most addictive substances on the planet, and they use them as rewards. And then, so the theory behind habit creation is we have to struggle and live through this pain and suffer in order to get something that then we get to reward ourselves. But when you do that, you're going to create volatile cycles in the way that you live, and they're destructive. And it's not a great way to live. I want to wake up tomorrow knowing that I get to do what I love to do. That's the reward. My life is a reward. I don't need a fucking reward for achieving a goal, because the goal is a stop-off point that tells me that I'm on track. That's it. If you plan your life right and you live, and by the way, this has taken me like, 15 years, 18 years, because I was about 2021 when my whole life changed, where my best friend's 3-year-old niece was killed in a car accident. And I realized my life was off track. I was 21. And now I turned 38 this year. But I've got to the point now where the majority of my day is just doing what I love to do. And that's the reward. But that doesn't happen overnight. And hopefully now I can teach people to do it within a couple of years. But it still takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy to be able to do that. But the point that I'm trying to make is that in our society, it's so easy to get people to swing and be volatile and get caught up in other shit that they can't control. You can't control a footy match. Why the fuck are you getting excited about it? And then why are you getting depressed about it? It doesn't make sense. If politics gets you excited or gets you stressed out, then you either have to decide that you want to be in politics and you're going to change it. If not, then just let it go and go and do what you're here to do and serve your purpose in life. And if it's to be a great parent as well, then focus on that until you've achieved that goal and part of that mission, and then move on to the next thing. But you just really need to know what your focus is and not get distracted by too much other shit in our society as well. But just be very careful about the charges that are created, especially in our society, because it'll throw off track.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I don't want to keep you too much longer because, we've been going for about an hour and a half now. But I guess, we could go on for ages going down these rabbit holes and stuff. It's a lot of fun. If people want to follow you some more, what's the best page or place to follow you on?
Look, all my social media platforms are just look up Michael, Michael, Mojo, Mojo, and 00. So it's Michael Mojo 00 on all social media platforms. You can easily find me. You're welcome to shoot me a message. It does take me a bit of time to get back to people, a couple of days in some cases, sometimes a week, just depends on what I have going on. I've got a couple of clients flying in this week from interstate to work with, and then an event on the weekend. So if you shoot me a message in the next couple of days, might be hard, but yeah, you can do that. Check out our website, themojomaster.com.au, and just check out some of the events maybe that we've got coming up. But yeah, that's probably the best place to do it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks heaps for coming on tonight. Appreciate it. There's been a shit ton of value that's come out of it. I think people have got a lot of notes and stuff going on. I saw a lot of love coming up through the comments and people just mashing that love button and the like button and all that a few times. So that was really good. Thanks heaps for coming on.
So that's my pleasure. Look, I just hope that as long as one person got something out of tonight from something I've said, I hope that I've made some sort of an impact and some sort of a contribution to someone. So, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And, all I can say to everyone is just figure out who you are, like know yourself. I mean, this is been spoken about for thousands of years. Know thyself, be thyself, and then just live the life that you're born to live. And don't get too caught up in all the other shit that's going on, because, you can't be good at everything. You have to be yourself. And I know you've probably spoken about this as well, especially if there are a lot of parents on here. Not everyone's highest value is being a parent, but that doesn't mean you can't be a great parent. Okay, my dad, his highest value isn't being a parent, but he's a fucking excellent dad. Okay, he has other priorities in life, and provided that he lives those values, it makes him a better person to be around. I know that my highest value is definitely not family. Okay, family's like number 5 or number 6. But what I do know is that when I live the values that are meaningful for me, I'm more present and more aware in the way that I live. And so when I'm catching up with my family, I'm present with them. I'm not thinking about the 50 other things that I prefer to be doing. And I've just met so many other people who they come to my events and their parents and they say, you know, kids are my highest value. But then when I ask them, they go, well, my relationship's my highest value and my career's my highest value. And what that means is that they're really confused about the way that they're living and they're setting themselves up for absolute mental destruction because you're going to hate yourself no matter what you do. When you're focusing on being a parent, your mind's going to be preoccupied with career. When you're focusing on your career, you're going to be preoccupied on your health. When you're focusing on your health and you're at the gym after work, you're going to be feeling like a shit parent. You're going to be wanting to be at home with your kids. You can never fucking win that game. So just be yourself, love yourself, and do what you're born to do. Be great. Do something great in your own life, and only you know what you're capable of.
And don't be afraid to get help. I think all the most successful people, those who have really found themselves and really gone after it, they all get help from somewhere. And along the way, you know, get a mentor and then move on and get someone else. That's just the way it is. Yeah. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll probably talk to you pretty soon.
Yeah, mate. And just on that point before I go, mate, I know I'm holding on to the conversation a little bit here,
That's
but just that's what you said about getting help. I think and reaching out and being open to learn, I think, is one of the greatest things that you ever do. Up until the age of 21, I thought personal development was absolute horseshit, and I had friends who told me about it. I just thought that it was a waste of time. I was caught up in an environment where everyone thought that this stuff was the dumbest shit that you could possibly do. And the same was going to the gym and getting a personal trainer. I used to have people who told me back in the day, like, going to the gym's dumb. You can just run around the block. But when we look at it now, it created a whole change in society. And I was part of that movement of personal trainers back years ago that sort of started that movement of it becoming cool and integrating with doctors and physios and so on. But only recently as well, I've had, back when I was younger and I was 21 and 22, I had a whole bunch of my really close friends would go to the pub every night after work. You know, I'm an ex-diesel mechanic. Go to the pub every night after work. They'd gamble on dogs. I was never really into gambling, but they'd, you know, waste all their money trying to win cash. And I got to a point where I realized that I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I started investing in personal development and self-growth and going to courses and seminars. They just told me everyone was ripping me off. This shit's the dumbest thing. Why the fuck are you doing that? You don't need any of that. Life's not that complicated. But I kept doing it. And eventually I broke away from that group and I felt all alone. I felt by myself and I just kept doing it. Now, it took probably 5 to 6 years. Even my family would judge me and criticize me for doing it. It took me 5 or 6 years to start to show the results, just like any investment. Unless it's a massive bubble, which is going on right now, unless it's a massive bubble, you can invest in something that might take years or even decades to happen. But when it does, everyone else sees it and they'll tell you how fucking lucky you were. It wasn't luck, it's just you had the balls or the courage to do something when everyone else wouldn't. And over the years, I've always said that if you drive a car over a bunch of leaves really, really fast, you watch sometimes the leaves just straight away fly behind the car. And there's some of the friends that you have. When you're inspired, you inspire some of them to do things straight away. But there'll be a whole bunch of them that take a while and they'll start to go. And then even after the car drove past, 5 minutes later, you'll just see a little leaf blowing, still in that vacuum of the car. You'll still have friends who are like that think that you're an absolute nutcase for learning and growing. But just to finish off my story, only recently a friend of mine got in contact who was my best friend at 21 and 22, and he was part of that group. And he just did our Thrive Time event. And when he came along, when I spoke to him, he was in a lot of trouble. He's about to go to jail. He had a whole bunch of shit coming on. He's probably one of the nicest people I've ever met, but just got into the wrong thing. Anyway, he spoke at Thrive Time. He said, when Michael started doing this, we all thought he was a fucking idiot. We all thought he was a nut job. He was crazy. And then after a while, we started seeing what he was doing. And whether we wanted to admit it or not, we knew that he was on a path and that he was doing something that maybe we should do. And he said, in 2013, I wanted to contact you because I was already in a bit of trouble and I needed some help, but I was afraid to do it. And he said, now I'm in extreme trouble. And he said, I'm probably going to go away for a long, long time and not see my kids again. And he said, I wish I would have done it in 2013. I said, why didn't you? And he said, because in all honesty, mate, I was scared. I tell you that story because I think for a lot of people in this space, you know, whether you're working with Shane or other people in this sort of space, you're going to get a lot of feedback around people who are afraid or who are scared or who don't want to admit that they need help or don't want to grow and they think they've got everything sorted. But I think that that's most people's greatest weakness. Now, whether you're willing to be vulnerable now or vulnerable later, you're going to be vulnerable either way. So I think that being vulnerable is the greatest strength that a person has, because when you look in the mirror and say, I don't fucking know what I'm doing in this life and I'm not where I want to be, then you can go out there and you can actually start finding people that can help you to do that and who are further along the journey. No one has all the answers, by the way. No one. It's just there are experts in fields that can actually help you, but make sure they've got the results and make sure that they're the people, like question people. I love it when people say, why should I work with you? Okay, I'll tell you why. And if it doesn't fit, don't work with me. Okay, but at the same time, it's got to be someone who helps you. So I hope that helps. Just to finish off, Shane. Sorry about that, mate. Sorry for hijacking the last part, but I think that that's really important for everyone listening.
No, that's really awesome. The pattern that I see just very quickly in what you're talking about is you start going into the personal development, and then I think people around you, we've got the tall poppy syndrome, especially in Australia, where if you start to grow and you start to succeed, or you start to just grow, not necessarily even succeed, it shines a light on other people's shortcomings and other people's fear of growth and things like that. So they'll try the easiest way for them to stop that fear and that discomfort is by stopping your growth, by sabotaging you. But if you push through that and you go that bit more and you start to get some success and start to hit some goals and stuff, they've got no choice but to say, fuck, maybe I need to look at myself. Maybe I need to start going for a run each morning. So yeah, just keep pushing through, just keep smashing through, get whatever help you need, surround the dragon and do it.
Mate, so yeah, syndrome is great because I can tell grass doesn't get cut if it's not growing. So if you remember that, grass doesn't get cut unless it's growing. Just keep fucking growing, because the amount of whippersnippers and lawnmowers that you see trying to chop you down is a direct reflection of how great you are.
That's a good analogy.
Keep cranking. Fuck it. Get more lawnmowers.
Bring them on. Get a ride on.
Just keep fertilizing that lawn. Keep going as hard as you can.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks again, Michael. And I'll talk to you soon. People have got your detail, and of course, people can always contact me too if they can't find you, and I'll put them forward.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, mate. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.